A wedding in New York's elite social circles was nothing short of a spectacle. Lavish, extravagant, and a headline-worthy affair. And Ethan Calloway's wedding to Lillian Monroe was meant to be the event of the year. The Waldorf Astoria Hotel was transformed into a scene out of a fairy tale. Chandeliers sparkled like a sea of stars, floral arrangements lined every inch of the grand ballroom, and a live orchestra played soft melodies. Lily stood in the bridal suite, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the delicate lace veil draping over her golden curls. Her heart pounded against her ribcage. The ceremony should have started 15 minutes ago. Emily Carter, her maid of honor, tried to soothe her with a nervous smile. "He's probably just making sure everything is perfect, Lil," she said, though even she didn't sound convinced. Lily exhaled sharply, glancing at the vintage clock on the wall. 6:15 in p.m. Ethan wouldn't be late, she whispered to herself. He was the most punctual man she knew. Yet, he was nowhere to be found. Downstairs, the ballroom was filled with whispers. "Where's the groom? Did something happen? No way he would leave her at the altar, right?" The murmurs grew louder, a storm of doubt rippling through the crowd. Then, the door opened. The priest walked in, his face solemn. Lily's heart stopped. "Miss Monroe, I'm so sorry, but we've received word that Mr. Calloway will not be coming." For a second, the world tilted. The words hit her like a sledgehammer, knocking the air from her lungs. Her knees buckled, and she gripped the vanity table to keep herself from collapsing. Emily gasped, rushing to hold her. "Lily, I—" But Lily barely heard her. The pounding in her chest was deafening, a wild, panicked drumbeat. This couldn't be happening. She yanked up her dress and ran. She didn't care about the gasps from the bridesmaids. She didn't care about the judgmental stares from the guests. She just needed to see it for herself. Meanwhile, across the street, Ethan Calloway sat in the back seat of a sleek black town car, parked just outside the hotel. His grip tightened around his phone as he reread the last message from his mother. "This marriage will ruin you. Walk away while you still can." His jaw clenched. His hands trembled. His mother had always controlled him, his career, his choices, his life. And now, she had convinced him to walk away from the one person he had ever truly loved. Through the tinted glass, he saw her, Lily. Her white gown trailed behind her as she burst out of the hotel doors. Her expression was frantic, her eyes wild with desperation as she scanned the street for him. For one painful second, he nearly opened the door. He wanted to run to her, to tell her the truth, that he loved her, that he hadn't wanted this, that he was a coward for listening to his mother. But instead, he sank deeper into his seat, watching her from the shadows. He saw the moment her hope shattered, the way her shoulders slumped, the way her lips parted in a silent gasp of realization. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Then, something changed. She straightened her back, wiped her tears, lifted her chin, and then she walked away. No begging, no pleading, no final glance over her shoulder. She left, and Ethan knew in that moment that he had lost everything. The next day, Lily Monroe disappeared. There was no goodbye, no explanation, no trace of where she had gone. One minute, she was New York's most talked-about bride. The next, she was just a ghost of a scandalous past. Ethan Calloway buried himself in work. He told himself it was for the best, that he had made the right choice, that she was better off without him. But no matter how much success he achieved, no matter how many deals he closed, or how many headlines praised him, a part of him had died that night. And 5 years later, he would learn that Lily hadn't disappeared forever. She had simply started a new life, without him. And she hadn't been alone. Lily Monroe, sat at the back of a nearly empty Greyhound bus, her fingers clutching the edge of her coat as she stared out at the endless stretch of road ahead. She had been on the move for over a day, leaving behind the towering skyscrapers of New York for the unknown. The air outside grew colder as they entered Oregon, a place she had never set foot in, yet somehow it felt like exactly where she needed to be. The town she had chosen, Rainford, was a name she had picked randomly from a bus station map. The further away, the better. Her only possessions were a small suitcase, a few $100s saved from what little she had left, and the ache in her chest that hadn't left since that night. She had deleted every contact from her phone. Emily had tried to call. She had seen the endless texts, but Lily wasn't ready to face anyone, not yet. Her wedding dress had been left behind in a hotel room, crumpled on the floor, a symbol of a dream that had never been real to begin with. As the bus rumbled through the rain-drenched streets of Rainford, a sign appeared on the side of the road. "Welcome to Rainford, Oregon. Small town, big heart." Lily let out a shaky breath. Big heart? I could use some of that right now. The bus station was nearly deserted. A single street lamp flickered above, casting eerie shadows on the pavement. She pulled her coat tighter, hoisting her bag over her shoulder. Rainford was a town of no more than 5,000 people, a stark contrast to the neon-lit chaos of New York. Here, time moved slower. People knew each other's names, and strangers weren't exactly welcome. Lily found a small motel on the outskirts of town, the Blue Jay Inn, run by an older woman named Margaret Hayes. She was kind but wary, as if she had seen too many people passing through, running from something. "How long you planning to stay, honey?" Margaret asked, handing over a room key. Lily hesitated. I don't know yet." Margaret studied her for a moment before nodding. "Well, take your time figuring it out." The room was nothing special. A twin bed, a wooden dresser, a tiny TV. But it was hers. For the first time in 24 hours, she let herself breathe. And for the first time in weeks, she let herself cry. A month passed, and the weight of reality began to sink in. Rainford wasn't exactly brimming with job opportunities. Lily had never worked a real job before. New York's upper-class society didn't require socialites to wait tables. But this was her new reality. After walking into nearly every shop in town, she finally landed a job at Rosie's Diner. Rosie, the no-nonsense owner, gave Lily a skeptical once-over before shoving an apron at her. "You ever waited tables before?" "No, but I learned fast." "Good. 'Cause the breakfast crowd will eat you alive if you don't." The first week was hell. She mixed up orders, spilled coffee on a trucker, and nearly dropped an entire tray of pancakes on a local police officer. But she didn't give up. Every tip, every extra shift. She saved every penny. She rented a tiny one-room apartment above an old bookstore, trading luxury for survival. The walls were thin. The heater barely worked. But it was home. The town wasn't exactly welcoming. The locals whispered about the city girl who had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. "She ain't from around here. Looks like she's hiding from something." Poor thing won't last a month in Rainford. Lily ignored them. She had no choice. And just when she thought she had hit her lowest point, everything changed. Lily had been feeling off for weeks. The exhaustion, the nausea, the way she barely made it through shifts without feeling lightheaded. At first she blamed stress, the overwhelming weight of her past, the struggle to build a future. But then one morning, while scrubbing down the counters at Rosie's Diner, a sudden wave of dizziness made her stumble forward, nearly collapsing. "Lily, you all right?" Rosie asked, eyes narrowing in concern. Yeah, just tired." Oh, yeah, just tired. Rosie frowned, crossing her arms. Tired, huh? Or pregnant? The words hit Lily like a freight train. She stared at Rosie, her heart pounding. That's not, I mean, it's not possible. But as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't true. That night, she bought a pregnancy test from the only pharmacy in town. Sitting on the bathroom floor of her tiny apartment, hands trembling, she waited. The test turned positive. Her world stopped. She stared at the small screen, waiting for it to change, waiting for some miracle to undo what she already knew. Her hands went to her stomach. She wasn't alone anymore. A single tear slipped down her cheek, not from sadness, not from regret, but from fear. How could she raise a child on her own? How could she give them the life they deserved? But just as the panic threatened to swallow her whole, another feeling crept in. Determination. She had survived everything that had come before. She would survive this too. The next morning, she made an appointment at the Rainford Family Clinic. The waiting room was small, the walls decorated with faded posters about prenatal vitamins and newborn care. She rubbed her hands against her jeans, trying to keep herself from shaking. When her name was called, she followed Dr. Reynolds, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, into the examination room. All right, Miss Monroe, let's take a look. The ultrasound gel was cold against her stomach. She held her breath as the monitor flickered to life. Dr. Reynolds' eyes widened slightly. Oh. Lily's heart slammed against her ribs. Oh? Oh, what? What's wrong? Dr. Reynolds turned the screen toward her, a small smile appearing. Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. But you might want to brace yourself. Lily's fingers dug into the sheets. Why? Dr. Reynolds met her gaze. Because you're not just having one baby. You're having 4. Silence. Lily blinked. Then again. She couldn't have heard that right. 4, she whispered, her voice barely there. The doctor nodded, pointing at the screen. Quadruplets, a rare but perfectly healthy pregnancy. Lily felt like the room was spinning. She had barely come to terms with one child. How in the hell was she supposed to raise 4? Her hand went to her stomach, feeling the faintest flutter beneath her fingertips. Her babies. A tear slipped down her cheek, followed by another. But this time it wasn't just fear. It was love. Deep, fierce, unstoppable love. She wasn't alone anymore. And no matter what it took, she would fight for them. Rainford had become home. It wasn't the life Lily Monroe had once dreamed of, but it was hers. In a small 2-bedroom house on the outskirts of town, life was far from glamorous. The living room doubled as a playground. The kitchen was a battlefield of breakfast disasters, and sleep was a luxury she hadn't known in years. And yet, despite the mess, the exhaustion, the never-ending chaos, she wouldn't trade it for the world. Because this was her family, her 4 boys, each of them unique, each of them a piece of her heart, walking around with tiny feet and boundless energy. Lucas was the eldest, by exactly 2 minutes, and he wore that title with pride. He was the leader, the protector, the one who tried and often failed to keep his brothers out of trouble. Noah, the quiet one, loved nothing more than drawing. His favorite thing to do was sit at the kitchen table, lost in a world of colors and imagination. Liam was all fire, bold, fearless, and always looking for a challenge. If there was a tree to climb or a rule to break, Liam was the first one there. And then there was Oliver, the smallest, the shyest, but also the one with the biggest heart. He clung to Lily the most, always needing to be reassured, held, loved. 4 different personalities, 4 different needs, but only one of her. And somehow, some way, she made it work. Lily had become an expert in multitasking. Mornings were mayhem, getting 4 boys dressed, fed, and out the door in time for daycare was a daily miracle. Lucas, where's your backpack? Noah, don't put peanut butter on Liam's head. Oliver, baby, your shoes are on the wrong feet again. She worked 2 jobs, one as a waitress at Rosie's Diner, the other selling handmade jewelry online. Every penny she made went into keeping the boys fed, clothed, and happy. And yet, no matter how tired she was, she always made time for them. Every bedtime story, every skinned knee, every "mommy, look at this" moment, because they were her world, and she refused to let them feel like they were missing something. One evening, after an exhausting day, Lily sat on the couch with a cup of cheap instant coffee, watching her boys play. Lucas, ever the responsible one, sat at the kitchen table with a pile of coins in front of him, carefully counting them. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Lucas glanced up, his expression serious. "Saving money for you, Mommy, so you don't have to work so much." Lily's heart broke. She walked over, kneeling beside him. "Baby, you don't have to worry about that. That's my job." Lucas looked down at the coins, determined. "But you always look tired." Tears stung her eyes, but she forced a smile. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him close. "I'm tired because I love you guys so much, and I'd do it all over again." Lucas didn't say anything, just hugged her tighter. And in that moment, Lily knew, no matter how hard this life was, it was worth every second. Not everyone in Rainford saw things the same way. Despite 5 years of proving herself, there were still whispers, stares, judgment. The town had never forgotten how she arrived, alone, pregnant, and mysterious. Do you think she even knows who their father is? 4 kids and no husband. What kind of woman does that? She's probably after some rich guy's money. She ignored it. Most days, but some days it stung. Like when Mrs. Whitmore, an older woman who had lived in Rainford for 50 years, stood at the grocery store checkout line behind her and muttered, "Women like you always end up regretting their choices." Lily clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay calm. But before she could respond, a tiny voice spoke up. It was Oliver. Standing next to her, his small hand gripping her coat, he looked up at Mrs. Whitmore and said, "Mommy's the best mommy in the world." Lily blinked, caught off guard. Mrs. Whitmore looked startled, as if she hadn't expected an actual response. Oliver squeezed Lily's hand, then turned back to her, grinning. "Right, Mommy?" Lily smiled, kneeling down to kiss his forehead. "That's right, baby." And just like that, the judgment of a bitter old woman meant absolutely nothing. It was a Saturday afternoon when it happened. Lily had taken the boys to the local park, a rare day off where she could just breathe. They ran through the grass, climbed the old jungle gym, played tag, just being kids. And then she saw him, Ethan Calloway, sitting on a park bench, watching them. Her heart stopped. Her body froze as the world around her seemed to blur. She hadn't seen him in 5 years. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, what she would say, how she would react. But now that it was here, she couldn't move. Then, as if sensing something, Ethan's eyes met hers. He looked at her, then at the boys. His expression shifted from shock to realization, and then pure, undeniable recognition. He knew. He knew. Lily's stomach dropped. Rainford had become home. It wasn't the life Lily Monroe had once dreamed of, but it was hers. In a small 2-bedroom house on the outskirts of town, life was far from glamorous. The living room doubled as a playground. The kitchen was a battlefield of breakfast disasters, and sleep was a luxury she hadn't known in years. And yet, despite the mess, the exhaustion, the never-ending chaos, she wouldn't trade it for the world. Because this was her family, her 4 boys, each of them unique, each of them a piece of her heart, walking around with tiny feet and boundless energy. Lucas was the eldest, by exactly 2 minutes, and he wore that title with pride. He was the leader, the protector, the one who tried and often failed to keep his brothers out of trouble. Noah, the quiet one, loved nothing more than drawing. His favorite thing to do was sit at the kitchen table, lost in a world of colors and imagination. Liam was all fire, bold, fearless, and always looking for a challenge. If there was a tree to climb or a rule to break, Liam was the first one there. And then there was Oliver, the smallest, the shyest, but also the one with the biggest heart. He clung to Lily the most, always needing to be reassured, held, loved. 4 different personalities, 4 different needs, but only one of her. And somehow, some way, she made it work. Lily had become an expert in multitasking. Mornings were mayhem, getting 4 boys dressed, fed, and out the door in time for daycare was a daily miracle. Lucas, where's your backpack? Noah, don't put peanut butter on Liam's head. Oliver, baby, your shoes are on the wrong feet again. She worked 2 jobs, one as a waitress at Rosie's Diner, the other selling handmade jewelry online. Every penny she made went into keeping the boys fed, clothed, and happy. And yet, no matter how tired she was, she always made time for them. Every bedtime story, every skinned knee, every "mommy, look at this" moment, because they were her world, and she refused to let them feel like they were missing something. One evening, after an exhausting day, Lily sat on the couch with a cup of cheap instant coffee, watching her boys play. Lucas, ever the responsible one, sat at the kitchen table with a pile of coins in front of him, carefully counting them. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. Lucas glanced up, his expression serious. "Saving money for you, Mommy, so you don't have to work so much." Lily's heart broke. She walked over, kneeling beside him. "Baby, you don't have to worry about that. That's my job." Lucas looked down at the coins, determined. "But you always look tired." Tears stung her eyes, but she forced a smile. She wrapped her arms around him, pulling him close. "I'm tired because I love you guys so much, and I'd do it all over again." Lucas didn't say anything, just hugged her tighter. And in that moment, Lily knew, no matter how hard this life was, it was worth every second. Not everyone in Rainford saw things the same way. Despite 5 years of proving herself, there were still whispers, stares, judgment. The town had never forgotten how she arrived, alone, pregnant, and mysterious. Do you think she even knows who their father is? 4 kids and no husband. What kind of woman does that? She's probably after some rich guy's money. She ignored it. Most days, but some days it stung. Like when Mrs. Whitmore, an older woman who had lived in Rainford for 50 years, stood at the grocery store checkout line behind her and muttered, "Women like you always end up regretting their choices." Lily clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay calm. But before she could respond, a tiny voice spoke up. It was Oliver. Standing next to her, his small hand gripping her coat, he looked up at Mrs. Whitmore and said, "Mommy's the best mommy in the world." Lily blinked, caught off guard. Mrs. Whitmore looked startled, as if she hadn't expected an actual response. Oliver squeezed Lily's hand, then turned back to her, grinning. "Right, Mommy?" Lily smiled, kneeling down to kiss his forehead. "That's right, baby." And just like that, the judgment of a bitter old woman meant absolutely nothing. It was a Saturday afternoon when it happened. Lily had taken the boys to the local park, a rare day off where she could just breathe. They ran through the grass, climbed the old jungle gym, played tag, just being kids. And then she saw him, Ethan Calloway, sitting on a park bench, watching them. Her heart stopped. Her body froze as the world around her seemed to blur. She hadn't seen him in 5 years. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, what she would say, how she would react. But now that it was here, she couldn't move. Then, as if sensing something, Ethan's eyes met hers. He looked at her, then at the boys. His expression shifted from shock to realization, and then pure, undeniable recognition. He knew. He knew. Lily's stomach dropped. The crisp autumn air rustled through the leaves as children's laughter filled the park. Lily Monroe had always found peace in this place, her safe space from the rest of the world. But today, everything changed. Across the playground, a pair of familiar hazel eyes locked onto hers. She froze. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as her past collided with her present. Ethan Calloway. He was right there, sitting on a weathered park bench, watching her boys. Their boys. For a moment, she prayed she was imagining it, that her mind was playing cruel tricks. But then, as if pulled by an invisible force, his gaze drifted toward the children. His expression shifted, shock, confusion, recognition. And then, the words that shattered the fragile peace she had built for 5 years. Lily, are they mine? The air thickened around her. It felt like the world had tilted, like she had stepped into an alternate reality. One where the man who abandoned her at the altar had suddenly resurfaced, demanding answers he had no right to. Lucas, the eldest of her 4 boys, noticed her stiff posture. "Mommy, what's wrong?" he asked, tugging at her sleeve. His innocent voice snapped her out of the trance. Lily's hands curled into fists, her knuckles turning white. Her first instinct? Run. Take the boys, leave the park, pretend this moment never happened. But it was too late. Ethan was already standing, closing the distance between them. Lily turned to her sons, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Boys, let's go. We're leaving." They groaned in unison, protesting as they continued their game. "5 more minutes, Mommy," Liam called, hanging from the monkey bars. "Yeah, we just got here," Oliver chimed in. Lily clenched her jaw. She knew arguing would only draw more attention, so instead, she turned toward the one man she had hoped to never see again. Ethan stopped just a few feet away. Up close, he looked different, older, sharper, more refined, but the familiarity in his features was undeniable. He wasn't the reckless 24-year-old who had shattered her heart years ago. Now, he was a man dressed in a tailored suit, his hair perfectly styled, his presence commanding as ever. And yet, for all the power he held in the business world, right now, he looked lost. "Lily," his voice was quieter this time, almost uncertain. She refused to let it shake her. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" His eyes flickered back to the 4 boys who were still laughing, completely unaware of the storm brewing between their parents. "I was in town for a meeting. I never expected to—" He stopped, inhaling sharply. "I never expected to see them." Her spine stiffened. "Well, now you have. So you can leave." Ethan's brows furrowed. "Lily, please, are they—" She cut him off before he could finish the question. "You don't get to ask that. Not after what you did." His jaw tightened. Guilt? He looked at her the way he always had, when he knew he'd screwed up. But it didn't matter now. Not when she had spent 5 years picking up the pieces of her life. I need to know, he said, his voice low. I have a right to... Lily let out a sharp, bitter laugh. A right? Ethan, you gave up that right the second you left me standing at the altar. The words landed hard. She could see it in the way his expression flickered, like he had never fully considered the damage he had caused. But Lily wasn't done. You don't get to walk back into my life now demanding answers. You don't get to waltz in here and pretend like you care. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. Lily, please. And that's when Lucas, the ever-curious, ever-observant Lucas, stepped forward. His big brown eyes darted between his mother and the stranger standing in front of her. Mommy, who is this man? Silence. Lily's chest tightened. This was the moment she had feared for so long. Ethan crouched down to Lucas's level. Lily's stomach dropped. She wanted to grab her son, pull him away, protect him from the truth. But she knew Lucas. He was too smart, too observant to be brushed off with a lie. Ethan hesitated. My name is Ethan, he said carefully. Lucas tilted his head. Do you know my mommy? Ethan exhaled, then gave a small, hesitant nod. Yeah, I do. Lucas studied him for a long moment. Then, out of nowhere, he grinned. Oh, are you one of her old customers from the cafe? People always tell Mommy she makes the best coffee. Lily almost laughed at the irony. Ethan, however, seemed caught off guard. No, He trailed off, glancing at Lily, silently asking for permission. She folded her arms. Lucas, sweetheart, let's get your brothers. It's time to go. Lucas pouted but obeyed. As he ran off to gather Noah, Liam, and Oliver, Ethan straightened. Lily? His voice was firmer now. We need to talk. She shook her head. There's nothing to talk about. But Ethan wasn't backing down. You can't hide this from me. I want a DNA test. Lily's stomach twisted. Here it was. The fight she had always feared. No. She said it without hesitation. Ethan's brows drew together. No. You heard me. She took a step closer, her voice deadly calm. I have spent 5 years raising them. Alone. 5 years protecting them from the kind of pain you left me with. And I will not let you walk in here and destroy the life I built for them. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. Lily, I have a right to know. You had that right once. You lost it. A heavy silence hung between them. Ethan's face was unreadable. But in his eyes, buried deep beneath the frustration and the shock, there was something else. Regret. But regret didn't change the past. Lily turned, calling out to her boys. Come on, kids, we're leaving. As she walked away, her heart pounded. Because deep down she knew. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Lily barely slept that night. Even after tucking the boys into bed, their tiny bodies curled up under the soft blankets, she couldn't shake the unease clawing at her chest. The encounter at the park replayed in her mind over and over. Ethan Calloway was back. And worse, he wanted a DNA test. No, she whispered to herself, gripping her coffee mug tightly as she sat at the small kitchen table. She had spent the last 5 years doing everything alone, holding her boys when they cried, working long shifts just to put food on the table, sacrificing sleep, comfort, and even her dreams, all for them. And now, after all that time, Ethan thought he could just show up and demand answers? Number. She wouldn't let him. A knock at the door made her flinch. Her heart pounded as she stood up, fearing Ethan had somehow found their home. But when she pulled the door open, she was met with the familiar face of Amelia Wright, her best friend, and an attorney at one of the top law firms in Portland. The second Amelia saw Lily's face, she sighed. You look like hell. Lily let out a dry laugh and stepped aside, letting Amelia in. Amelia didn't waste time. She set her purse down, crossed her arms, and got straight to the point. Tell me everything. Lily took a deep breath, then spilled everything about the park encounter. Amelia listened carefully, her lawyer instincts kicking in. When Lily finally finished, Amelia leaned back, tapping her fingers against the kitchen counter. Okay, let's talk worst-case scenario. Lily's stomach dropped. Worst case? Ethan files a lawsuit for joint custody. Lily froze. The very idea of it made her want to scream, "Number! No way. He can't just walk in and—" "Lily," Amelia said gently. "Legally speaking, he can try." Lily shook her head violently. "He hasn't been in their lives for 5 years. He doesn't get to—" "I know. But if he wants to push this legally, we need to be ready." Lily slumped into a chair, pressing her hands to her forehead. "Amelia, what if he wins?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Amelia's expression softened. "Listen to me. You have something he doesn't. 5 years of being their sole provider. Courts don't just rip children away from the only parent they've ever known. But we need to be smart." Lily swallowed hard. "How do we fight this?" Amelia pulled out her notepad. "First, we need to document everything. Your work history, your financials, the kids' routines, every single detail proving that you are their primary caregiver. Second, if he does push for a paternity test, we can't stop it legally, but we can make sure it works in your favor." Lily grimaced. "You mean, prove he abandoned them?" "Exactly." Lily sighed, rubbing her temples. "And what if he just wants visitation?" Amelia hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Then, we negotiate. Supervised visits at first. But that's only if you're willing." Lily bit her lip. The thought of Ethan being around the boys terrified her. But she also knew, deep down, her sons deserved the truth, even if that truth might hurt them. The next week passed in a blur. Lily poured herself into gathering everything Amelia had suggested. Proof of her work, her rent payments, even testimonies from her neighbors about how devoted she was to her boys. But no amount of preparation could have braced her for the moment the lawsuit arrived. A man in a suit knocked on her door, handed her an envelope, and left without a word. Her hands shook as she ripped it open. The words felt like a punch to the gut. Lily sank onto the couch, reading the document over and over. But the words never changed. He was serious. He was going to fight her for the boys. A voice broke through her haze. "Mommy?" She looked up. Lucas stood in the doorway, his small face scrunched with concern. "Why are you crying?" Lily quickly wiped her tears, forcing a smile. "I'm okay, sweetheart." But Lucas didn't believe her. He climbed onto the couch, snuggling into her side. "Is it because of that man from the park?" Her breath caught. "Lucas, he wants to take us away, doesn't he?" Lily's chest tightened. How could she explain something so complicated to a 5-year-old? But then, Lucas did something that completely shattered her heart. He grabbed her hand, squeezing it tight. "If he tries, we won't go with him." Tears burned Lily's eyes. She wrapped her arms around Lucas, holding on for dear life. "I promise, baby, no one is taking you away from me." Meanwhile, across town, Ethan Calloway sat in his penthouse apartment, staring at the legal papers in front of him. His lawyer had assured him that filing for joint custody was the best move. But looking at the paperwork now, Ethan felt wrong. For years, he had buried himself in work, convincing himself that he had done the right thing by walking away. But seeing those boys, his sons, changed everything. They weren't just an abstract idea anymore. They were real. They had his eyes, his features, his blood. And yet, they didn't even know him. His mind replayed Lucas's voice at the park. "Mommy, Who is this man? It had gutted him. He was their father, and yet he was nothing to them. Ethan set down the papers and ran a hand through his hair. Maybe filing the lawsuit had been a mistake. Maybe his phone buzzed. Charlotte Calloway. Ethan sighed before answering. Mother. Good. You went through with it. Her voice was satisfied. Ethan hesitated. I don't know if... Don't be weak, Ethan. She cut him off. That woman stole 5 years of your children's lives from you. You have every right to claim them. His jaw clenched. She didn't steal them from me, Mother. I walked away. A cold silence filled the line. And do you regret it? Ethan exhaled. Every damn day. Charlotte huffed. Then do what needs to be done. Fight for your children. Fight for your legacy. Ethan gritted his teeth as he ended the call. His mother had always been ruthless, and if he let her, she would bulldoze her way into this situation. But this wasn't about her. This was about his sons. And for the first time in his life, Ethan realized he was going to have to fight for something that truly mattered. The morning air was crisp as Lily stepped onto her porch, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. The weight of the custody battle sat heavy on her chest. She had barely slept, the fear of losing her boys gnawing at her from the inside out. She watched as Lucas, Noah, Liam, and Oliver played in the small front yard, their laughter cutting through the tension that had consumed her mind. They were her world. And now, the man who had once walked away wanted to claim them as his own. I won't let him, she whispered, gripping her mug tightly. A knock on the door startled her. Her pulse quickened. For a second she feared it was Ethan again, demanding another conversation she wasn't ready to have. But when she opened the door, she found Morgan Hayes, her former landlady and longtime friend. Morgan had been one of the first people in Rainford to welcome Lily when she arrived, pregnant and alone. The elderly woman had taken her under her wing, offering comfort when Lily had none. Now, Morgan's face was lined with concern. I heard about Ethan Calloway, she said without preamble, stepping inside. Lily sighed, closing the door behind her. The whole town probably has by now, she muttered. Morgan shook her head. It's not just the lawsuit, dear. There's something you need to know about Ethan's family. Lily frowned. What do you mean? But Morgan took a deep breath, as if weighing whether she should even speak. I used to work for the Calloways. Lily's eyes widened. What? Years ago, before I moved here. I was a housekeeper in their New York estate for nearly 20 years. I saw everything. Lily swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around her mug. Morgan, what are you saying? Morgan hesitated for only a second before laying out the truth. Charlotte Calloway is a manipulator, Lily, Morgan said, her voice low. That woman doesn't just control people. She destroys them. And she's always had big plans for Ethan. He was never supposed to marry you. Lily felt a chill creep up her spine. Are you saying she forced him to leave me? Morgan exhaled. I don't know exactly what she said to him, but I do know this. Charlotte Calloway has never let anything stand in the way of her family's power. She has ruined businesses, blackmailed people, and bribed officials. If she convinced Ethan to abandon you, then she did it because she saw you as a threat. Lily shook her head in disbelief. But that doesn't make sense. I was just a regular girl. I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. I was nothing to her. That's exactly why, Morgan said. Charlotte believes in legacy. She doesn't want her son tied to someone she thinks is beneath him. And if she went as far as to sabotage your relationship, it means she saw something in you that scared her. Lily's heart pounded. Why are you telling me this now? Morgan gave her a sad smile. Because Charlotte is still pulling the strings, and if she's involved in this custody case, you need to be prepared for the worst. Across town, Ethan Calloway sat in his office, staring at his laptop screen. The custody documents were in front of him, but he couldn't focus. His mind was tangled in doubt. He had spent years justifying his decision to leave Lily. He had told himself it was for the best, that it was the only choice he had. But was that really the truth? Why, his mother had always been overbearing, calculating. And now, after seeing Lily again, seeing the strength in her eyes, the love she had for their sons, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He needed answers. Without hesitation, Ethan grabbed his coat and headed out the door. There was only one person who could tell him the truth: Morgan. Meanwhile, in a high-rise apartment across the city, Vanessa Sterling sipped her expensive red wine, scrolling through articles about Ethan's custody battle. A smirk played on her lips. She had spent years crafting the perfect relationship with Ethan, molding herself into the ideal partner for a Calloway. And then Lily Monroe, his past, came crawling back into the picture, bringing 4 little surprises with her. Vanessa set her glass down, reaching for her phone. She dialed a number. The voice on the other end answered. "Mrs. Sterling, I have a job for you," Vanessa said coolly. "Find out everything you can about Lily Monroe. I don't care what it takes. Bury her." Later that evening, Ethan found himself standing on Morgan Hayes' porch. He knocked. When the door opened, Morgan's face turned to stone. "What do you want, Ethan?" "The truth," Ethan said, his voice tight. Morgan studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "Come inside." Ethan stepped in, glancing around at the cozy space. He had never expected to end up here, face to face, with a woman who had once worked in his childhood home. Morgan wasted no time. "Ethan, do you know why your mother sent you that message the day of your wedding?" Ethan clenched his jaw. "She said the marriage would ruin me." Morgan scoffed. "No, Ethan. She said that because she was afraid. Afraid that Lily would change you, that she would make you see the world outside of Calloway wealth. And that scared her." Ethan stared at her. "Why?" Morgan hesitated, then dropped a bombshell. "Because your father was just like you once, and your mother destroyed him for it." Ethan's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Morgan took a deep breath. "Your father fell in love with someone outside the Calloway circle, a woman who wasn't worthy in your mother's eyes. Charlotte made sure that relationship never lasted, and when he refused to let her control him anymore, she drove him to the edge. That's why he disappeared from your life, Ethan. He couldn't take it anymore." Ethan felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Everything he had believed about his family, his choices, his past. It was all a lie. Morgan met his gaze. "Don't let her do the same thing to you, Ethan. Don't let her take your children away." Back in Rainford, Lily was cleaning up after dinner when her phone buzzed. A message. She opened it and froze. Her stomach dropped as she stared at the headline flashing across the screen. Lily Monroe, unfit mother, Ethan Calloway's exposed secret. Accompanied by a photo of her and the boys, taken without her knowledge. Her hands shook. Someone was coming after her, and she had a terrible feeling she knew exactly who it was. The world around Lily seemed to crumble as she stared at the article on her phone. The flashing headline, the invasive photos, the cold, calculated way it painted her as an unfit mother. It was a nightmare unfolding before her eyes. The phone nearly slipped from her grasp. She forced herself to read. Sources close to the Calloway family confirmed that Ethan Calloway, the billionaire heir, was blindsided by the existence of his 4 illegitimate children. While he has taken steps to form a relationship with them, their mother, Lily Monroe, has proven to be difficult, refusing to cooperate with Ethan's attempts at responsible co-parenting. Court documents suggest that Calloway is merely fighting for the well-being of his children, ensuring they have access to a financially and emotionally stable future, one their mother, regrettably, cannot provide. A strangled breath escaped her lips. No, no, this isn't happening. The article wasn't just biased, it was a full-on character assassination, and she had no doubt whose hands were behind it. Vanessa Sterling. That witch was playing dirty. The next morning, Lily met with Amelia Wright, her lawyer and closest friend, in a small cafe on the edge of town. Lily tossed her phone onto the table. "Tell me how the hell they can get away with this." Amelia scrolled through the article, her eyes narrowing. "This isn't just bad press, Lily. This is a strategic move. They're trying to manipulate the court of public opinion before we even set foot in the actual courtroom. If enough people start believing you're unfit, it could influence the judge." Lily clenched her fists. "What do we do?" "First," Amelia said, pulling out a file, "we fight fire with fire. We collect evidence proving you're a responsible mother. Testimonies, financial records, statements from teachers, neighbors, even pediatricians. Everything that shows the judge that your boys are safe, happy, and thriving with you." Lily nodded, feeling a small flicker of hope. "And what about Ethan?" Amelia hesitated. "Ethan's case has a strong foundation. He has the money, the power, and the influence. But if we can prove this lawsuit is being fueled by outside forces, Charlotte and Vanessa, then we can dismantle his credibility." Lily let out a shaky breath. "Then let's do it." While Lily prepared for battle, Ethan sat in his office, staring at the newspaper article sprawled across his desk. He hadn't authorized this. "Damn it, Vanessa," he muttered under his breath. He reached for his phone and dialed her number. She answered on the second ring. "Ethan, darling, I assume you saw the article. Are you out of your mind?" His voice was sharp, laced with anger. "I never approved this. I told you I wanted to handle things fairly." "Fairly?" Vanessa let out a cold laugh. "Ethan, you're trying to negotiate with a woman who kept your children from you for 5 years. You're being naive. That woman is their mother." Vanessa scoffed. "And she's also standing in the way of what's best for them." Ethan gritted his teeth. "Stay out of this, Vanessa. If you pull another stunt like this, we're done." Vanessa's tone darkened. "Oh, Ethan, you really think you're in control of this? I'm protecting your best interests, whether you like it or not." She hung up. Ethan stared at the phone in his hand, anger boiling in his chest. This wasn't about custody anymore. This was about control. And he was done letting people pull his strings. 2 weeks later, the Rainford County Courthouse was packed. Lily sat beside Amelia at the plaintiff's table, her heart pounding as she glanced across the room. Ethan was there, flanked by his high-powered legal team. But what made her blood boil was the sight of Vanessa Sterling sitting behind him, perfectly poised, smirking. "She has no business being here," Lily muttered. "She wants to rattle you," Amelia said calmly. "Don't let her." The judge entered. The courtroom hushed. This court is now in session for the case of Calloway versus Monroe. And just like that, the fight for her children had begun. Ethan's lawyer, a sleek, confident man named Gregory Pierce, was the first to speak. "Your Honor, my client is not here to take these children away from their mother. He simply seeks the opportunity to be the father they deserve. Mr. Calloway has the resources, the stability, and the experience to provide them with the best possible future." He gestured toward Ethan. It is in the children's best interest that they know their father. Lily's jaw tightened. Then it was Amelia's turn. She stood, her presence commanding. Your Honor, my client has raised these boys alone for 5 years. She has provided them with a loving home, a safe environment, and everything they need to thrive. Mr. Calloway, however, walked away. And now, after half a decade, he expects to waltz back in and claim his role as their father. Her voice was sharp. Parenthood is not a privilege, it is a responsibility. And he abandoned that responsibility the moment he left Lily Monroe standing at the altar. A murmur spread through the courtrooms. Ethan stiffened. The judge glanced between them. We will hear testimony to determine what is in the best interest of the children. Morgan Hayes took the stand first. She cleared her throat, her voice unwavering. I worked for the Calloway family for 20 years. I witnessed firsthand how Charlotte Calloway controlled her son's life. She manipulated him, forced him to make choices that served her agenda. She didn't approve of Lily because she thought she wasn't worthy of their name. The room went silent. Morgan continued. Charlotte engineered Ethan's departure. She made him believe he had no choice but to leave Lily. And now, she's trying to do the same thing again, by taking away these children. Ethan's fists clenched. Lily blinked, stunned. The judge frowned. Are you saying this custody case is being influenced by Ethan Calloway's mother? Yes, Morgan said firmly. And I have proof. She reached into her bag and pulled out a series of letters. These are private correspondences between Charlotte and Vanessa Sterling, discussing how to frame Lily as an unfit mother. Gasps echoed through the room. Vanessa's face drained of color. Ethan's eyes darkened with rage. The judge read the documents, his expression grave. After a moment, he looked up. This changes things. With the revelation of manipulation and deception, the judge ordered an extended investigation before reaching a final decision. The courtroom buzzed with speculation. As Lily stood to leave, Ethan approached her. His face was unreadable. I didn't know, he said quietly. She studied him, searching for any sign of dishonesty. And yet, you still filed this lawsuit. Ethan swallowed hard. I just wanted to be their father. Then prove it, she said, her voice like steel. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there. For the first time in his life, Ethan Calloway had no idea what to do next. The courtroom battle had shaken Ethan Calloway to his core. The revelations, the accusations, the truth about his mother's manipulation, everything had changed in the blink of an eye. But the one thing that remained crystal clear was his children. Lucas, Noah, Liam, Oliver. They were his sons. And if he was going to prove that he deserved to be in their lives, he had to fight for them the right way. Not in a courtroom, not with legal threats, but by earning their trust. Lily had challenged him with 4 simple words. Then prove it. And for the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't going to walk away. 2 weeks after the last court hearing, Ethan stood outside Lily's house, gripping the small box in his hands. Inside were 4 carefully wrapped gifts, one for each of his sons. He had spent hours picking them out, making sure each one was special. Lily opened the door, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. What are you doing here? I'm not here to argue, Lily, he said calmly. I just want to see them. She hesitated. Then with a sigh, she stepped aside. They're in the backyard. Ethan exhaled in relief as he stepped through the house and onto the back porch. The sight before him took his breath away. Lucas was helping Liam build something out of old cardboard boxes, while Noah sat on the grass, sketching quietly in a notebook. Oliver, the youngest, was running around with a makeshift cape, pretending to be a superhero. For a moment, Ethan felt like an outsider looking in. He had missed so much. Then suddenly, "Mommy, who is that?" All four boys turned their heads, their innocent eyes locking onto him. His heart pounded. Lucas was the first to recognize him. His gaze darkened slightly. "That's the man from the park," he said, his tone flat. Noah frowned. "The one who made Mommy upset?" Liam crossed his arms. "Why is he here?" Oliver, the shyest of the group, simply hid behind Lucas, peeking out from behind his older brother. Ethan's chest tightened. I wanted to see you," he admitted, kneeling to their level. "I brought something for each of you." Carefully, he opened the box, revealing 4 small packages. Lucas eyed them suspiciously. "Is this a trick?" Ethan let out a short chuckle. "No tricks, buddy. Just gifts." Noah took his first, cautiously peeling the wrapping paper. Inside was a set of professional watercolor paints and brushes. His eyes widened. "You remembered I liked art." "I didn't forget," Ethan said softly. "Your mom told me you're really talented." Noah hesitated, then nodded. Liam received a miniature soccer ball, his fingers tracing over the team logo. "Mom says we can't afford sports stuff," Liam mumbled. "Now you can practice any time," Ethan said. Oliver unwrapped a stuffed bear, its soft fur almost identical to the one he had when he was a kid. The little boy hesitated before clutching it to his chest. Then there was Lucas, the leader, the protector, the most skeptical of them all. He unwrapped his gift, a set of detective books. Lucas glanced up. "I like mysteries." "I know," Ethan said with a small smile. "I used to love them too." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Lucas muttered, "Thanks." And just like that, Ethan knew he had taken the first step. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept showing up. No legal threats, no lawyers, no demands, just him. And little by little, the boys began to let their guard down. Ethan took Noah to his first art class, staying the entire time, and even painting alongside him. He played soccer with Liam, teaching him tricks that Lily never could. He sat and read mystery novels with Lucas, encouraging him to solve the endings before they got there. And he let Oliver climb onto his lap during story time, feeling the warmth of his smallest son against his chest. But the most important thing, he never once left without saying goodbye. And the boys started to trust that he would come back. One evening, Lily found herself standing in the doorway, watching Ethan as he helped Lucas build a model airplane at the kitchen table. The way he listened, the way he laughed, the way he encouraged them. This wasn't the same man who had abandoned her at the altar. This was a man who was trying. And that scared her more than anything, because if he kept this up, she wasn't sure how much longer she could hate him. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan arrived at Lily's house earlier than usual. Before he could even knock, the door swung open. Lucas stood there, looking at him with serious eyes. "I need to ask you something," the boy said. Ethan crouched down. "Okay, shoot." Lucas hesitated, then blurted out, "Are you going to leave us again?" Ethan felt like he had been punched in the gut. Slowly, carefully, he placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "No, buddy, I'm not going anywhere." Lucas studied his face for a long moment. Then, for the first time, he stepped forward and hugged him. It was quick, just a second. But to Ethan, it meant everything. That night, as Ethan was leaving, Lily stopped him at the door. "Wait." He turned. "Yeah?" She crossed her arms, shifting uncomfortably. "The boys. They like having you around." His heart skipped a beat. "And?" She sighed. "And, if you want, you can start coming by for dinner too." Ethan froze. He hadn't expected this. Not so soon. Not from Lily. She looked away, muttering, "Don't make me regret this." He grinned. "I won't." And for the first time since this all began, Ethan Calloway truly believed that he had a second chance. The smell of roasted chicken filled the small kitchen, mingling with the faint scent of vanilla candles burning on the counter. The soft hum of conversation between the boys, mixed with the rhythmic clatter of silverware against ceramic plates. It had been a long time since their dinner table felt this full, and Lily wasn't entirely sure how she felt about it. Ethan sat across from her, laughing at one of Liam's exaggerated stories about a playground argument. Lucas was listening intently, occasionally glancing up at Ethan like he was studying him, trying to figure him out. Noah was more reserved, drawing on the back of a napkin. But Oliver, the little boy, had curled up beside Ethan, his head resting against his arm, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And maybe, just maybe it was. For weeks, Ethan had been showing up, every morning, every evening, never once disappearing without an explanation. Lily had spent 5 years preparing for the moment he would leave again. And now, she wasn't sure what to do with the fact that he hadn't. The decision to let Ethan join them for dinner wasn't an easy one. Lily had spent years building a life without him, learning how to navigate every crisis alone. Now, with Ethan integrating himself into the boys' lives more and more, she found herself wondering where she fit into all of this. The boys loved having him around. She could see it in the way Lucas tried to act indifferent, but always listened when Ethan spoke. The way Noah snuck glances at him when he thought no one was looking. The way Liam challenged him to races in the backyard just to see if he could win. And then there was Oliver, the quietest of the four, but the one who had latched onto Ethan the fastest. "You're getting too comfortable," Lily murmured one evening as she washed the dishes, watching Ethan over the rim of the sink. He was sprawled on the couch, one arm slung over the backrest, while Lucas sat beside him with a book in his lap. Liam was on the floor, rolling a toy car over the coffee table. Ethan smirked. "Am I?" Lily's lips pressed into a thin line. "This isn't your home." The smirk faded slightly, but he didn't look offended. Instead, he glanced at Lucas, who had completely ignored the conversation, too busy solving the mystery novel in front of him. "No," Ethan admitted, "but it's theirs." Lily's chest tightened, because she knew what he meant. He wasn't trying to replace her. He was just trying to be a part of their world. It started with small things. A ride to school when Lily was running late. An extra set of hands when the boys had a meltdown over homework. Helping Oliver tie his shoes when Lily was carrying groceries. She didn't ask for his help, but somehow Ethan kept showing up before she could tell him she didn't need it. And soon, they weren't just tolerating each other. They were actually working together. Lily noticed it first during a chaotic morning. Oliver had misplaced his favorite stuffed bear. Liam was having a meltdown over a missing sneaker, and Noah had spilled juice all over his shirt. Lucas, the only one remotely calm, stood near the door sighing. "We're gonna be late again." Ethan, who had only just walked in, took one look at the situation and didn't hesitate. "Liam, check under the couch for your shoe. Noah, I'll grab you a clean shirt. Oliver, buddy, your bear is probably under your bed. Let's go." It was flawless execution. Within minutes, the boys were ready, and Lily, who had been seconds away from losing her mind, could only stand there blinking in disbelief. Ethan grinned, grabbing his keys. "See? Teamwork." Lily hated that he was right. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Ethan casually suggested, "We should go camping." Silence. Then, "Yes." Liam nearly fell out of his chair. "Mom, can we go? Please, please, please." "Camping?" Lily narrowed her eyes. You mean, like, outside? That's still usually how it works. Yeah, Ethan teased. Lucas looked intrigued. I've never been camping before. We could sleep in tents, Noah said, warming up to the idea. And roast marshmallows. Oliver's eyes sparkled. Can we? Lily hesitated. Taking 4 children into the woods for an entire weekend sounded like a recipe for disaster. But the boys were so excited, and the last thing she wanted was for them to miss out on something because she was too afraid of things going wrong. She glanced at Ethan, who was watching her expectantly, as if daring her to say no. With a sigh, she rolled her eyes. Fine. The cheers nearly shook the house. The first night at the campsite was an absolute disaster. Noah freaked out over a spider in the tent. Liam kept trying to wander off into the woods. Oliver insisted on sleeping in Ethan's tent instead of Lily's. Lucas? He just sat by the fire, silently reading his book while completely ignoring the chaos. Lily was on the verge of calling the whole thing off when Ethan nudged her. Relax, Monroe. They're kids. This is what they do. I don't know how you're so calm about this, she muttered, because this is the best night of their lives. She looked over at the boys. How happy they were. The way Oliver clung to Ethan as they roasted marshmallows. The way Liam beamed when Ethan helped him whittle a stick. The way Noah kept shyly showing Ethan his drawings of the trees. And for the first time since this all started, she let herself breathe. Later that night, after the boys were finally asleep, Lily and Ethan sat by the fire. The flickering flames cast long shadows over Ethan's face as he poked at the embers with a stick. I never got to do this as a kid, he admitted. Lily raised a brow. Go camping? He shook his head. Have a family. The words hit harder than she expected. Lily didn't know much about Ethan's past, but she knew enough to realize he had been raised by money and ambition, not by love and patience. You're good at this, she found herself saying. With them. He glanced at her. You think so? I know so. A small smile played on his lips, and for a brief moment, the tension between them wasn't there. It was just the two of them, sitting in the quiet, letting the past fade away, if only for a little while. The golden hues of autumn painted the trees as Lily walked through the small grocery store, her shopping basket half full with essentials for the week. The past few months had felt surreal, almost like a dream she wasn't sure she was allowed to have. Ethan was consistent, something she had never expected from him. He showed up every morning, helped with the boys, took them to school, and actually made an effort to be part of their lives. And for the first time in years, Lily felt like she wasn't carrying everything alone. But deep down, there was a whisper of doubt, because life had taught her that whenever things seemed too good to be true, they usually were. And she had no idea that her worst fears were about to come true. The first red flag came when Charlotte Calloway showed up at her doorstep. Dressed in an elegant white coat with pearls around her neck, she looked completely out of place in Lily's small neighborhood. The air around her practically reeked of entitlement, as if she were doing Lily a favor by standing there. Miss Monroe, Charlotte said smoothly. May I come in? Lily tightened her grip on the door handle. You're wasting your time. On the contrary, Charlotte said, stepping forward without permission. I believe this visit will be quite productive. Lily clenched her jaw, but stepped aside, letting the woman in. Charlotte didn't even glance at the modest surroundings. She walked straight to the small dining table and placed a folder down. I have a proposal for you. Lily folded her arms. Let me guess. You want me to walk away? Charlotte smiled. I see you're not as naive as you used to be. Lily ignored the jab. Let's cut to the chase, she said. tapping her fingers on the table. "What do you want?" Charlotte slid the folder across. Inside, there was a check, a disgustingly large amount of money. "Take it," Charlotte said coolly. "Start a new life somewhere far away. Let Ethan raise the boys properly, with the kind of life they deserve." Lily's blood boiled. "The kind of life they deserve," she repeated. "They already have a life, a good one. One that doesn't involve a grandmother trying to buy them like they're Callaways." Charlotte cut her off. "They should be raised as such." Lily's vision blurred with rage. "Get out!" Charlotte tilted her head. "I expected more gratitude." Lily slammed the folder shut and shoved it back at her. "You think money makes you powerful, but you're wrong." She leaned in, lowering her voice to a sharp whisper. "You have no control over us anymore, and you never will." Charlotte's smile barely faltered, but there was something cold in her eyes now. "We'll see." And with that, she walked out, her heels clicking against the floor like a final warning. Lily wasn't going to tell Ethan about Charlotte's visit. Not yet. She wanted to believe that he wouldn't betray her, that he wouldn't choose his mother over them. But 2 days later, her world shattered. She was in town picking up the boys from school when she overheard two women talking outside the cafe. "Did you hear?" one of them whispered. "Ethan Callaway is planning to fight for full custody." Lily's heart stopped. "I thought he and that woman were getting along." "Guess not. His mother must be behind it. But hey, when you have money like the Callaways, you always get what you want." Lily didn't remember walking to her car, didn't remember the drive home. All she knew was that she couldn't breathe. That night, after the boys were asleep, Ethan showed up at her house like he always did. But this time, Lily wasn't smiling. She wasn't welcoming. She was furious. "You lied to me," she said the moment he walked in. Ethan frowned. "Lily, what are you? You're planning to take them away from me." Her voice shook, but she refused to back down. "After everything?" Ethan's eyes widened. "What? No, I never. Don't lie to me." He took a step forward, his hands raised. "Lily, I swear, I heard everything, Ethan. I know about the custody case. I know your mother is behind this, and I know you let her." Ethan looked genuinely shocked. "Lily, listen to me. Get out." He froze. "Lily, I said get out." And for the first time since coming back into their lives, Ethan obeyed. For days, Ethan tried calling, tried texting, tried coming over. Lily ignored him because she couldn't take the risk. She had let him in, had believed in him, and he had proved her right to doubt him. But then, something unexpected happened. Morgan, the former housekeeper from the Callaway estate, showed up at her door. "Miss Monroe, I need to tell you something." Lily, exhausted and weary, crossed her arms. "Unless you're here to tell me your old boss is dropping the custody case, I'm not interested." Morgan's expression hardened. "He doesn't even know about it." Lily blinked. "What?" "Ethan never filed for custody." Morgan's voice was firm. "Charlotte did. Behind his back." Lily's stomach dropped. "You're lying." "I have proof." Morgan handed her a folder. Inside were documents, legal filings, memos, all signed by Charlotte, not Ethan. Lily felt sick because she had accused Ethan of the one thing he didn't do. And now, she didn't know if he would ever forgive her. The night was colder than usual. A harsh wind rattled the windows of Lily's small home as she sat at the kitchen table, staring at the documents Morgan had given her. The words blurred together, her mind spinning. Charlotte had been behind everything. Ethan had never filed for custody. She had pushed him away, accused him of something he didn't do. And now, she had no idea if she could fix it. Across town, Ethan sat alone in his penthouse, his fingers gripping a whiskey glass. He had barely touched. His mother's voice still echoed in his head. "I only did what was best for you." "She's keeping your sons from you, Ethan." "I had no choice." But she had a choice, and she had chosen to destroy him. Lily spent the next 2 days debating what to do. Should she call him? Show up at his place? Would he even listen to her? In the end, she chose the only option that felt right. She waited for him to come, but he never did. The third morning, as she made breakfast, Lucas spoke up. "Is Dad coming today?" Lily's hand froze on the spatula. The other boys perked up, looking at her expectantly. I don't know, sweetheart." Lucas frowned. "Did he change his mind?" Liam crossed his arms. "Maybe he doesn't want us anymore." Lily's chest tightened. "That's not true," she said quickly. "Your father loves you." Noah, always the quiet observer, stared at her. "Then why isn't he here?" Lily had no answer. And that's when she realized something terrifying. She had spent 5 years protecting her boys from Ethan's absence. But now, they were hurt by it. They had grown to love him, and that scared her more than anything. That night, Lily sat outside on the porch, her arms wrapped around herself. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, a reminder that the seasons were changing. She had made a mistake. She had pushed him away. But she wasn't going to let her pride ruin this for her sons. Taking a deep breath, she pulled out her phone and typed a message. "Lily, can we talk?" She hit send. The message was marked as delivered, but the response never came. Hours passed. Then an entire day. Nothing. And for the first time in years, Lily felt afraid. Because what if she had lost him for good? The next morning, a knock on the door jolted her awake. She rushed to open it, only to find Amelia standing there. "You look like hell," her best friend announced, stepping inside. "I assume this is about Ethan?" Lily sighed. "I messed up, Amelia." Amelia sat on the couch, crossing her legs. "Tell me something I don't know." Lily rubbed her temples. "He won't answer me. And the boys, they're waiting for him." Amelia's expression softened. "You need to fix this, Lil. And not just for them." Lily swallowed. "I don't know how." Amelia smirked. "Then it's a good thing I do." Ethan Calloway was a hard man to reach, especially when he didn't want to be reached. So when Lily walked into his office building, the entire staff froze. It was a place of polished marble floors, cold efficiency, and people who spoke in hushed tones. She did not belong here, but she didn't care. "I need to see Ethan," she told the receptionist. The woman hesitated. "Mr. Calloway isn't taking visitors. He'll take this one." A voice behind her made her turn. Morgan. The former housekeeper gave her a small smile. "Come with me." Lily followed her to the top floor, where Ethan's office loomed like a fortress. Morgan knocked, then pushed the door open without waiting. Ethan sat behind a massive desk, his face cold as he looked up. "What are you doing here?" Lily's heart pounded. She took a deep breath and spoke the only truth that mattered. "I was wrong." Ethan's eyes darkened. "About what? Everything?" She stepped forward. "I should have trusted you. I should have let you explain. But I let my fear, my past, control me." She inhaled sharply. "And I hurt you." Ethan leaned back in his chair, watching her. "Why now?" Lily swallowed. "Because the boys miss you." For the first time his mask cracked, his jaw clenched, his hands curling into fists. "You pushed me away." "I know." "You accused me of something I didn't do." "I know." "And now you think you can just walk in here and—" "No," she interrupted. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know that I'm sorry." A heavy silence fell. Then Ethan stood and walked past her. For a moment, she thought he was leaving, but then he stopped at the door. "I'll see them tomorrow." And with that, he was gone. Lily let out a shaky breath. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next day, the boys were waiting. When Ethan's car pulled into the driveway, they ran to him. "Dad!" Lucas tackled him first, then Liam, Noah, and Oliver. For a moment, Ethan just stood there, his arms wrapped around them. Then he closed his eyes and held them tighter. Lily watched from the porch, her heart aching, because for the first time, she saw the man she had always hoped he could be. And maybe, just maybe, he was finally ready to prove it. The Calloway estate loomed in the distance, a monument to wealth and power. For years, it had been the centerpiece of Ethan's life, his sanctuary, his prison. But today, as he parked outside, it felt different, because he was here for war. Charlotte Calloway was waiting inside, her expression unreadable. A woman who had built an empire with her bare hands, whose words had shaped Ethan's destiny from the moment he was born. But today, he wasn't a boy seeking his mother's approval. Today, he was a father protecting his family. "Ethan," Charlotte greeted, sipping her tea like nothing was wrong. "Why are you here?" Ethan placed his hands on the back of a chair, steadying himself. "I know what you did, Mother." Charlotte barely blinked. "You're going to have to be more specific, dear." "You tried to take my children from me." Her lips pursed. "No, Ethan. I tried to protect you. There's a difference. By filing a custody suit behind my back? By making Lily believe I was the enemy?" His voice rose, but Charlotte remained calm. "She is the enemy, darling. That woman is the mother of my sons." Ethan cut her off, his jaw clenched. For the first time, Charlotte's face twitched. "You're making a mistake, Ethan," she said smoothly. "You think she loves you. She will ruin you, just like I warned you years ago." Ethan exhaled sharply, stepping back. "The only person who ever ruined me was you, Mother." Charlotte's grip tightened around her cup, but she said nothing. "And I'm done letting you control my life." A heavy silence fell. Then Charlotte laughed, a cold, sharp sound that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "You think this is over?" she whispered. Ethan stiffened. "I will not let you destroy yourself over that woman, Ethan. And if you refuse to listen to reason—" She set her cup down with deliberate force. "Then, you leave me no choice." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" Charlotte's smile was slow and cruel. "You'll see." And suddenly, Ethan knew. This wasn't over. 3 days later, Lily sat at the kitchen table, helping Noah with his drawing. "What do you think, Mommy?" Noah asked, holding up his sketch. Lily smiled. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." Before she could say more, there was a knock at the door. She stood, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and walked over. When she opened it, her stomach dropped. A woman stood there, dressed in all black, her expression unreadable. "Miss Monroe." Lily nodded slowly. Yes?" The woman handed her an envelope. "You've been served." Lily's fingers trembled as she took it. The moment the woman left, she ripped open the envelope, her breath quickening as she scanned the document inside. And then her heart stopped. Charlotte Calloway was suing for full custody. That night, Ethan arrived at Lily's house, expecting to see his sons. Instead, he found Lily pacing the kitchen, gripping the legal papers in her hands. When she turned to face him, her eyes were blazing. "Your mother just declared war on me." Ethan took the papers from her hands and skimmed them. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. "This is insane," he muttered. "She has no grounds. She has power, Ethan, Lily snapped, and money, and influence, and now she's coming after our children. Ethan's fists clenched. She won't win. You don't know that. Yes, I do, he said firmly. Lily exhaled, shaking her head. This is what she does, Ethan. She manipulates. She destroys. Her voice cracked. She's never going to let us be happy. Ethan stepped forward, gently placing his hands on her arms. She doesn't get to decide that anymore. Lily hesitated, her breathing shallow. I will fight for them, Lily. For you. For all of us. For the first time that night, she let herself believe him. And for the first time in years, she let him hold her. The next morning, Ethan met with his lawyer. We need to hit back. Fast, Amelia said, flipping through the lawsuit. We can counterfile, Ethan suggested. Amelia shook her head. That's not enough. We need proof that she's unfit to raise them. Ethan frowned. She's one of the most powerful women in New York. She's covered every track. Amelia smirked. Oh, not every track. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Inside were documents. Charlotte has skeletons, Ethan, and we're about to dig them up. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and Amelia worked tirelessly to gather evidence against Charlotte. They dug into her past, her business dealings, her relationships with powerful men. And then they found it. A financial scandal, a fraudulent investment, a secret that could ruin her. Ethan stared at the evidence in front of him, his heart pounding. This is it, Amelia said. This is how we take her down. Ethan nodded. Let's finish this. The night before the court hearing, Charlotte received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a single photograph, a copy of the fraudulent documents Ethan had found. A note was attached. Drop the lawsuit, or this goes public. Charlotte's hands shook as she read it. She knew exactly who had sent it, and for the first time in her life, she was afraid. The next morning, as the courtroom filled, Charlotte's seat was empty. The judge cleared his throat. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the plaintiff has withdrawn her case. Lily's jaw dropped. Ethan closed his eyes, relief washing over him. It was over. Charlotte had lost. Outside the courthouse, Lily turned to Ethan. She backed down. Ethan exhaled. She knew she had no choice. Lily studied him. You didn't just beat her, did you? You destroyed her. Ethan's jaw tightened. I protected our family. A pause. That's all that matters. Lily nodded slowly. For the first time in forever, she felt safe. Ethan had won. And for the first time, they had a future worth fighting for. The storm had passed, but the aftermath still lingered. For the first time in years, Lily could breathe. Charlotte Calloway was gone, defeated, exiled from their lives. The custody battle was over. The boys were safe. And yet, Lily still felt the weight of everything they had been through. Because now, there was no one left to blame. No villain lurking in the shadows. No legal war to fight. Just her and Ethan. And the question neither of them dared to ask. What now? Life slowly settled into a new rhythm. Ethan became a constant in their lives. Not just an occasional visitor, but a real father. The kind who showed up for school drop-offs, helped with homework, and knew exactly how Liam liked his pancakes. The boys adored him. Lily? She was still figuring it out. Because no matter how much Ethan had changed, no matter how devoted he was to their sons, she wasn't sure she could let him back in. Not completely. Not yet. One evening, Ethan arrived at Lily's house carrying a bag of groceries. You're cooking? Lily asked, raising an eyebrow. Ethan grinned. Technically, yes. In reality, I'll probably need you to save the meal halfway through. Lily laughed despite herself. The boys gathered around, as Ethan tried to make spaghetti. Oliver watched in horror as Ethan butchered the chopping process. "You're doing it wrong, Daddy," he said seriously. Ethan feigned offense. "Excuse me? I am a chef." Lucas shook his head. "No, you're not." Liam smirked. "Mommy should cook instead." Ethan sighed dramatically. "Et tu, Liam?" Noah giggled, reaching for his sketch pad. "I'm going to draw this disaster," he announced. Lily watched from the counter, her heart tugging at the scene before her. This was normal. This was family. But could she let herself believe in it? Later that night, after the boys were asleep, Ethan lingered. Lily turned to him, crossing her arms. "You should go." Ethan hesitated. "Lily, can we talk?" She stiffened. "About what?" He took a deep breath. "About us." Lily swallowed. "There is no us, Ethan." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Okay. Then tell me why you keep looking at me like there could be." Lily's pulse quickened. "You left me, Ethan." "I know." "You broke me." "I know." "How am I supposed to just forget that?" Ethan stepped closer. "I don't want you to forget. I just want you to see who I am now." Lily looked away. "I don't know if I can." A long silence stretched between them. Then, finally, "Then let me prove it to you." Ethan didn't push. He didn't try to rush her. Instead, he showed up. Every day, every little moment. Until one night, when the weight of everything finally broke her. Lily had had a rough day at work. The boys had been extra chaotic. And when she finally collapsed onto the couch, exhausted, Ethan was there. "Lily," he said softly, sitting beside her. She sighed. "I don't have the energy to fight with you right now." "Good," he murmured, "because I'm not here to fight." She closed her eyes, resting her head against the couch. For the first time in so long, she let herself relax. Ethan hesitated, then gently reached for her hand. Lily stiffened, but she didn't pull away. For the first time, she let him hold her. And for the first time, she didn't feel alone. 1 week later, Ethan knocked on her door. "Come with me," he said. Lily frowned. "Where?" "You'll see." Against her better judgment, she followed him outside. He led her to a quiet hill overlooking the town, where a picnic blanket was laid out. Lily blinked. "What is this?" Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "The place I first realized I never stopped loving you." Her breath hitched. "Ethan, let me say this," he interrupted. He took a deep breath. "I messed up. I know that. And I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I won't ever make that mistake again." Lily's throat tightened. "You can't just erase the past, Ethan." "I know. So, what do you expect me to do? Just forget everything?" "No." He stepped closer. "I expect you to let me love you anyway." Tears burned at the back of Lily's eyes. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to let him in. But could she? After everything? She shook her head. "I need time." Ethan nodded. "Then take all the time you need." And for the first time, Lily wondered if maybe, just maybe, she was ready to forgive. The air was different. Lily could feel it. It had been weeks since that night on the hill. Weeks since Ethan had bared his heart. Weeks since she had admitted, if only to herself, that she was beginning to believe him. He had given her time. No pressure, no demands, just quiet patience. And somehow, without her realizing it, her walls had started to crack. She still wasn't sure what that meant. But she knew one thing. For the first time in a long, long time, she was happy. The morning was filled with laughter. The boys had begged for a trip to the lake, and despite her initial hesitation, Lily had caved. She packed sandwiches, Ethan loaded the car, and the 6 of them took off, windows down, music blasting, the boys singing along to whatever song was playing on the radio. By the time they arrived, the sun was high, the lake sparkling beneath its golden light. Lucas and Liam raced toward the water, daring each other to jump in first. Oliver clung to Ethan's leg, hesitant. "What if it's too cold?" he whispered. Ethan knelt down, ruffling his hair. "Then I guess I'll have to jump in first and test it out for you, huh?" Oliver grinned. "Yeah." Ethan winked at Lily before dramatically sprinting toward the water. Cannonball! A loud splash. Water sprayed everywhere. The boys howled with laughter. Even Lily couldn't help but smile. Hours passed in a blur of sun and laughter. Lily watched as Ethan played, laughed, taught, and listened. This was the life she had wanted for her sons. A life filled with love, stability, presence. She had given them everything she could. But with Ethan, there was something more. Something she hadn't realized they were missing. Something she hadn't realized she was missing. As the day wound down, Ethan pulled Lily aside. "Come with me," he said. Lily hesitated. "Where?" "It's a surprise." She rolled her eyes, but let him take her hand. He led her away from the lake, toward a small wooden dock. The sun hung low, turning the sky golden and pink. The water shimmered. It was breathtaking. "You planned this," Lily murmured. Ethan smiled. "Maybe." She shook her head, amusement in her eyes. "You're ridiculous. You love it." Lily froze. Ethan froze. The words hung between them, heavy and unspoken. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then, Ethan took a deep breath. "Lily, there's something I need to say." Her heart raced. "Ethan." "Just listen," he cut in gently. "I spent years running from my own mistakes. I let my mother control me. I let my fears control me. And worst of all, I let you go. And I regret that every single day." Lily's breath caught. "Ethan." "I love you," he said simply. "I've always loved you. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that again." Lily stared at him. Her heart pounded. And then, Ethan pulled something from his pocket. A ring. Simple. Elegant. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't extravagant. She always had. And for the first time, she let herself admit it. She let herself believe. She let herself fall. A tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered, "Yes." Ethan exhaled. And then, he kissed her. A deep, slow, achingly real kiss. The kind that said finally. The kind that changed everything. When they returned to the boys, Lily was still smiling. Ethan took her hand, squeezing it gently. Lucas was the first to notice. "Mommy, why are you blushing?" Liam's eyes narrowed. "Wait a minute." Noah gasped. "Did he?" Oliver's eyes widened. Ethan grinned. "She said yes." The reaction was immediate. The boys exploded with excitement. "You're getting married?" Lucas whooped. Liam fist-pumped the air. Noah clapped. Oliver launched himself into Lily's arms. "Does this mean Daddy's staying forever?" Lily's chest tightened. She looked at Ethan, at the way he watched her, unwavering, certain. And for the first time in 5 years, she didn't feel like she was alone. She smiled, pressing a kiss to Oliver's forehead. "Yes, baby. Forever." And for the first time she meant it. The day was finally here. After 5 years of pain, loss, and healing, Lily Monroe was finally about to marry Ethan Calloway. This time, there were no doubts, no second-guessing, no running away. This time, it was real. The house was a mess. The boys had too much energy, racing up and down the halls, trying on their new suits, arguing over who got to carry the rings. "I should carry them," Lucas declared. "I'm the oldest." "But I never get to do anything special," Liam protested. Noah, ever the peacemaker, sighed. Guys, what if we all carry them together? Oliver, still too shy to argue, nodded quickly. That sounds fair. Lily, standing in the doorway, laughed. All right, my little troublemakers, she said. How about we let Daddy decide? The boys froze. Then, as one, they bolted toward Ethan's room. Ethan was not ready. Not emotionally, not mentally, and definitely not physically. His tie was crooked, his jacket was still unbuttoned, and his nerves were all over the place. Why did I think I could do this without help? He muttered to himself, fumbling with his cufflinks. Lucas barged in first. Dad, who's carrying the rings? Liam followed. Yeah, we need an answer, Noah added. And it better be fair. Oliver peeked from behind them, waiting silently. Ethan blinked. He was supposed to be the one freaking out. But here were his sons, arguing over who got to carry the wedding rings. His wedding rings, his wedding, his family. A slow smile spread across his face. How about we let all of you do it, he said. The boys cheered. Ethan exhaled. All right, he whispered to himself. I can do this. The wedding took place at Willow Creek Gardens, a small, intimate setting, surrounded by nature, fairy lights, and close family. Nothing extravagant, nothing lavish, just love. And that was all that mattered. Lily stood at the entrance, her heart racing. She looked at herself in the mirror one last time. The dress was simple but elegant. Her hair was styled just the way Ethan liked it. And for the first time in years, she felt like a bride again. You ready? She turned. Margaret stood there smiling. Lily let out a shaky breath. I think so. Margaret squeezed her hand. Then go get your happily ever after, sweetheart. As the soft melody of the piano began, the guests stood. All eyes turned to Lily. She took a deep breath. Then she walked. Every step forward felt lighter. Every heartbeat felt stronger. And then she saw them. Lucas, Noah, Liam, and Oliver, standing proudly at the altar, holding the rings. And standing next to them, Ethan, waiting, watching, smiling. And that was all she needed. When Lily finally reached the altar, Ethan took her hand. It was warm, steady, familiar, like home. You look beautiful, he whispered. Lily blushed. You clean up pretty well yourself. The priest smiled. Shall we begin? The ceremony was simple, but perfect. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. Ethan, the priest said, do you take Lily to be your wife, to love and cherish, in sickness and in health, for all the days of your life? Ethan's eyes softened. I do. Lily's breath hitched. And Lily, the priest continued, do you take Ethan to be your husband, to love and cherish, in sickness and in health, for all the days of your life? Lily smiled. I do. You may now kiss the bride. Ethan pulled her close. His lips brushed against hers, a gentle, tender, filled with promise. The guests cheered. The boys whooped. And just like that, Lily Monroe was now Lily Calloway. For real, this time. The reception was a whirlwind of joy. Lucas made a ridiculous toast that had everyone laughing. Liam and Noah challenged Ethan to a dance battle. Oliver fell asleep in Lily's arms before the night was over. Ethan twirled Lily across the dance floor. Happy? He asked. Lily leaned into him. More than I ever thought I could be. Ethan kissed her forehead. Then that's all that matters. As the night came to a close, the boys ran up to them, holding a handmade book. We made you something. Lily and Ethan opened it. Inside were drawings of their family, of the wedding, of a house with the words "Our Home" written in bright colors. And on the very last page, a big, clumsy message written in marker. Our family is forever. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Ethan's hand tightened around hers. And in that moment, she knew, no matter what happened, no matter where life took them, they would always have this, each other, their children, their home, their love, forever. What do you think? Did Lily make the right decision by giving Ethan a second chance? Was it love that brought them back together? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let us know. Would you have forgiven Ethan? And if you made it this far, type "Family is forever" in the comments. Let's see who the real fans are. But wait, this isn't the end. Another story is coming your way. One filled with heart, hope, and unexpected twists. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a thing. Because sometimes the most incredible stories are the ones we never see coming. See you in the next one. Movie Magic.